All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. I just want to do a quick 5-minute breakdown of the logics for the prophecy of Daniel and why it is the dates that I've suggested, and my interpretation and reasoning for it, which I cover in my books, which are available on Amazon. So I don't have my book here to show this time, but anyways, this is a short video. So basically, it's very simple because I've thought about it this way, right? If you just read what Daniel says without any preconceived notions, okay? So you're not thinking about theories like everybody does. You just read what Daniel says. He tells you what it is. Okay, it's very simple. So when you read Daniel for what he says, it's clear as day. But if you have theories in mind and you read Daniel, it'll take you all day, right? And you'll never understand it, right? So you have to clear your mind of any preconceived notions of what you think is going to happen, what it's talking about. Just read what he says because he tells you, right? Now, if you read Daniel 12, verse 11, it says, from the time of the turning aside of the perpetual sacrifice. So we know this was 602 BC. That's when it happened with Nebuchadnezzar. The Bible records it. Okay, and to the giving out of the desolating abomination are days 1,290. Okay, so we know from history that the Dome of the Rock, which is the abomination, is built on the Temple Mount in 688 AD. Okay, so there's exactly 1,290 years between 602 BC and 1290. So it's very simple. It's what Daniel said. He said, from the time of the turning aside of the perpetual sacrifice and to the giving out of the desolating abomination are days 1,290. So as Daniel said, so it was. It's very simple. It's not complicated. And then the next verse, he says, oh, the blessedness of him who's waiting earnestly and does come to the days 1,330 and 5. And thou go on to the end, and thou does rest and does stand in thy lot at the end of the days. Right? Sorry, I have an itch. Right? So quite simply, what you do again is you go from 688 plus 1335, you come to the end, which is at the end of 2023 and 2024. This is further solidified in verse 7, okay, of chapter 12. Now, for context, in Daniel 11, he's described the rise of the beast kingdom, its founder, the rise of the kingdom, and all of that. And the chapter ends, a few verses before the chapter ends, it says that out of this despicable one will rise strong ones, probably some of the 10 horns, or maybe even the 11th king, probably, most likely. Well, it is the 11th king, but nonetheless, right? Strong ones arise out of him and appoint the desolating abomination. Okay, they would appoint the abomination. Now, the abomination is only mentioned once or twice in the scripture. It's only mentioned there and in the first verse that I read from chapter 12. Okay, so the only thing we get about the abomination, the only thing we're told, is in the verses I'm reading. So in chapter 12, it says that the abomination would be appointed 1,200. It says that the abomination would be appointed and erected, essentially, 1,290 years from when Nebuchadnezzar takes away the continual sacrifice. So it told us 688. Okay? In chapter 11, verse 30 is where it says that the strong ones, basically they erect the abomination. That's at the end of chapter 11. The start of chapter 12, Daniel has just been overwhelmed by all of his visions. That's the end of all the visions. That end of chapter 11, they appoint the abomination. Daniel is seeing this, and the chapter ends. And he's overwhelmed by the revelations, right, by the visions. That's the start of chapter 12. In verse 7, he asked the angel, how long till the end of these wonders? The angel tells him, from the completion of the scattering to the end of all these are 3.5 times. Now, the 3.5 times that the angel is telling Daniel is the same 3.5 time period in chapter 7, where the angel tells Daniel about the fourth beast kingdom. He says that 10 kings will arise with the final beast kingdom, but then an 11th will come. And to the 11th is given the period of 3.5 times in which their empire would rule over Israel as a beast kingdom. So you see that Daniel's cross-quoting itself, okay? So that's how you know that the 3.5 times, which is 1,260 years, you also have logic showing you that 1,260 years would fall into the time span that this beast kingdom is ruling as an empire. That's a vast period of time, longer than any of the prior beast kingdoms. If you look back in history, the only kingdom that did this over Israel was Islam, and it fits perfectly with the numbers, right? So But simply, Daniel told us about 602 to 688. And then he told us, quite simply, from 688 until 2024. That's what he told us. But he also told us about the period from 688 to 1948. That's in verse 7. He says, from the completion of the scattering, which took place when the Dome of the Rock was erected, and as instructed by Jesus, when you see the abomination standing on the holy place, you are to flee to the mountains. That was the completion of the exile. The exile had started in around 70 AD with the fall of the temple at the hands of Rome and continued for 600 something years until Islam conquered. When Islam conquered, Israel and Jerusalem weren't barren and devoid of people. There were still people there. But like Jesus warned, when you see the abomination built, you are to flee. Okay, a lot of people fled when they conquered Israel in 640, but when the 11th caliph built, who was the 10th, when the 10th caliph, who was the 11th ruler of Islam, built the Dome of the Rock and the Temple Mount, fulfilling Daniel's prophecy from chapter 7, okay, that was in 688. That was 1,290 years after. And then from there is the measure of 3.5 times, like chapter 7 said, until the 11th ruler would be given the measure of 3.5 times. Their empire would rule 1,260 years from that point. Now, if we look on the timeline of history, that is the year that the abomination, the Dome of the Rock, was built. So that's how everything triangulates into itself with Daniel's prophecy, correlating with proven history, and it's unmovable. And when you have this understanding and you go back and you read those verses from Daniel again with that correct understanding, it's clear as day. Okay, but when you go into reading Daniel with a false understanding, you'll be there all day trying to figure it out. Okay, but like I said, chapter 12 tells us that from when Nebuchadnezzar removed the continual sacrifice to the abomination, okay, is 1,290 years. And then from then until the end is 1,335 years. Okay, that takes you from 602 to 688 to 2024. Okay, quite simple. 602 BC to 688 AD to 2024 80. It's very simple. It's further backed up by chapter 7, like I said, where it says the 11th king, the 11th ruler of the final beast kingdom will mark the start of the 1,260 years. Okay, the 11th ruler came in and built the abomination in 688. Okay, and when you consider, like I said, that chapter 12 and chapter 11 are the only two places where it talks about the the continual sacrifice being removed and the abomination and all that being. Sorry, I have to sneeze. Sorry. Trying to make myself not sneeze. That worked. Sorry, I also made a verbal mistake there. Chapter 11 and chapter 12 are the only two places where it talks about the abomination. Separately, there's only two places where it talks about the sacrifice being altered like that. Where the only place it talks about the sacrifice being taken away is in chapter 12, okay? And I think it's only in chapter 12 because I did a video on this the other day where I read through all the other cases where it mentions the continual or the perpetual sacrifice. I'm just trying to think offhand. But anyways, nonetheless, it's very, very simple. There's no reason for anybody to be confused in this. It's very, very simple. It's rock solid. There's no reason or need for alternate theories. All alternate theories are bogus. This is completely rock solid, solid as a diamond. You can't move it or shake it. It cannot be disproven. It's absolutely 100% to the T, exact, to the year, to the digit, lines up with history, completely logical. You read the verses, it tells you what this is saying, okay? There's no, you need to twist this or crunch your mind. It's just, you read it and he says it's going to be blah, blah, blah. And then from blah to blah is this long. Very simple. And it's triangulated in when you get the chapter 7 reference and the other branch, like I said, that triangulates in and falls into place with this as well perfectly. Okay, so some people might say, well, why? Well, I don't know why you would feel the need to, because he just made it very simple. You have this period, then that period, and it's the end, right? But if you feel the need to dig into it deeper, you might say, I'm just thinking what other people might think, then, oh, why are you taking it as, some people think that, 1335 is a continuation from the 1290. You might think that, right? But there's only two scenarios. It's either that or it's not that. I've just given the correct scenario. I've had 20 years to think about this and think about every alternate theory, right? What I've said here is the resounding truth, right? You could think the 1335 is an extension of the 1290, but go and spend years crunching all those maths. It's all dead end walls, okay? It doesn't line up with history. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, okay? What does make sense is the theory that I've offered, that I have published in my book. It's rock solid, like I just said. I've spent 20 years refining this. Okay, I've had plenty of time to come up with every theory under the sun to try and disprove it and refine it, perfect it. And what it is right now is rock solid. Can't disprove it. Okay, so anyways, take care, folks. Hope this helps. At the end of the day, it's just reading what Daniel said without any preconceived notions, and what he says is very abundantly clear. So there you go. All right. There's no instruction to take the 1335 as an extension of the 1290. So if you want to think, oh, maybe it is, so then where's your justification for that? It doesn't tell you to do that. It tells you there's going to be 1290 days until the abomination. Then it tells you there's 1335 days until the end. It's very, very simple. Daniel just asked God before that breath out of God's mouth, asking God, you've just shown me all these things. You just told me there's 3.5 times that the beast kingdom will rule over after the completion of the scattering until finished are all those things. But what about the end? And then God says, blah, 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 blah. So Daniel had just asked him, what about the end? So God had literally told him how long it would be to the end. So God told him the roadmap until the end, starting with when Nebuchadnezzar took away the continual sacrifice, all the way up until the end, that whole time span mapped out by God, and also containing the 1260-year span exactly when the final beast kingdom would rule over. So that's what God put into that little package there in those few little paragraphs of the final chapters of Daniel, right? So it's very clear, very abundantly clear. And it's astounding that he even pinpointed the 11th ruler of the final beast kingdom would be the one where this point is. It's incredible. So anyways, take care, folks, and God bless.